Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here checking out Mighty Goose. This is a scrolling shooter platformer from Blast Mode and Playism, and just before we get into it, I played this game for about an hour before deciding to give you my thoughts, and I also got a copy of this game for free from the publisher. I did not pay for it. So with that said, let's talk about Mighty Goose. It is quite clearly a Metal Slug tribute. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is exactly what it's going for, and frankly, it pulls it off quite well. There are a couple of things that I have against it, but we'll talk about the positives that it's got going for it first. The first being that it looks absolutely gorgeous. There is just no denying this. There is so much talent and care put into the way that this game looks that it's incredible. Whether it be just the environments that you're running around in, having this really well done set of parallax backgrounds, or the animations, which are really smooth, incredibly well animated, very satisfying to either control or watch happen, with nothing in the way of just weird stiltedness or just jerkiness about them. They are incredibly smooth and they are really good to watch. Whether it be the weapons. The 5 weapons you get in this game, whether it be the Tesla cannon, the rocket launcher, the machine gun, the shotgun, they all look incredible. They all have really nice effects. They even get better when you've got the Mighty Goose Rage mode on. And they generally look great. One of the things you really need to do with the Metal Slug game is not only have your weapons look powerful, but feel powerful and sound powerful. And generally just be incredibly bombastic. And they have pulled this off with no degree of failure. They are absolutely perfect. They are really fun to use, and I really enjoy using them. Whether it be the character designs, with this ridiculous set of monsters and their different abilities, their different attacks, and the different characters that you run into, they all look great. They're all really well animated. They all have a good sense of personality to them, and they are really engaging to fight. Everything about this game just looks spectacular. They have done a great job with making this be a Metal Slug inspired game, while at the same time just putting their own little bits of flair into it, and it just looks really good. The gameplay is pretty simple. You walk around and you shoot things. You've got to jump, you've got to dodge, you've got the ability to throw out a special piece of equipment. In this, I was using mostly the bombs because they're just generally the most effective. We'll get to why shortly. You pick up weapons off fallen foes, or if you've got the dude following you around, the pig dude, he drops machine gun ammo for you, which is great. And that is basically it. You just proceed from left to right in the levels. Sometimes it'll make you backtrack a little bit. Sometimes it'll make you stay in the same spot. But otherwise, it's just more or less running and gunning with some light platforming. And for the most part, it works. Going into the Rage Goose mode is incredibly satisfying. All the weapons are really fun to use. The platforming is mostly simple enough. They don't challenge you too heavily, which is good, because the point of these games was never the platforming. And picking up all the individual weapons and using them is, again, just really satisfying. And as a result, the game does flow smoothly. It plays quite well. However, I do have a couple of nitpicks I would like to say about it. The main one is that you are really big, and the levels around you the camera around you is quite small, and as a result, when enemies start flooding in, it can be kind of hard to avoid them. Mighty Goose is really big, and his collision box is even bigger than his sprite, so as a result, it makes it kind of hard to avoid certain hits, because it looks like something's going to graze you, but it hits you. This doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it can be really annoying. Thankfully, you don't die instantly. You've got 4 hit points, but they can disappear pretty quick, trust me. These enemies are quite aggressive, and there is often a lot of them. And it can also be quite hard to see the bullets. Now, I have seen that they are working on a bullet visibility patch, so this might be improved a bit into the future. But yeah, it can be a bit rough to see bullets when they're incoming, especially with all the really fancy effects on screen, like every single bullet flickering off the side of an enemy, leaving some sparks behind, or just bullet casings falling out, or things like that. These are all really good effects. They all add a sense of atmosphere to the place, but I gotta tell you, man, it can make shit kinda hard to see. And as I said, they're working on it. The other major problem that I have with the way that this game goes about its gameplay, though, is the level design. Now, Metal Slug is full of set pieces, whether it be vehicles, whether it be bosses, whether it be change-ups to the way that the game works in order to keep things fresh, because you're going to need a lot of variety in order to keep a relatively simple game about walking on flat lines and shooting at enemies that come from different directions work. And Mighty Goose doesn't do the best in this because a lot of this game's level design is 80% the following encounter. You walk into an area, that's a flat line. Enemies come at you from the left and right, sometimes from the sky. Point left, shoot. Point right, shoot. Point up, shoot. Encounter completed, move on to the next. Now, that's not to say that that isn't all the game. Like, as you can see clearly in this video, there is clearly some, like, scrolling shooter sections. There is clearly some vehicle sections. There are a few sections that change up the formula just a little bit. But there are definitely a lot of sections where it's just a flat ground and you have to shoot left, right, and up. There are also very few sections where you have to actively take advantage of the platforming, whether it be like platforms in the middle of the arena that you need to use for a height advantage, or whether it be just general changes to the way the environment works in order to keep you on your toes, like parts that'll slow you down, environmental hazards that you need to avoid, things along those lines. In the first hour of the game, at least, there isn't very much of that, and as a result, a lot of the levels can start feeling kind of samey because they have to rely on the pool of enemies, and it can get repetitive even if you're swapping them out every couple of stages. The environment does change a fair bit. The stages are quite short, and they do introduce new enemies every couple of stages. So the level design things I'm not talking about aren't too bad, but I just gotta tell you, man, I wish there was a lot less flat and a lot more verticality, a lot more environmental things you need to worry about. It's just a fair bit simple at this point of the game, and it's just kind of disappointing as a result, to me personally at least. Hell, there's a level where it's basically just set in the same arena. So as a result, you just find yourself needing to shoot left, right, and up. And of course, they actually did something right there by helping it out, by introducing like shield enemies and making it so that you would need to like get a little bit of verticality on them in order to get to the enemies that were coming in behind them. But the game doesn't do that very often. It doesn't do that sort of intelligent design much. And even then, when that does happen, most of the time the result will just be jump, shoot downwards, because it gives you a little bit of a vertical boost, and that's it. Again, I don't think this is the worst thing in the world, but I do think it is, that and the visibility of the bullets plus the size of your hitbox are the two major issues with the game's design. But honestly, that's not that bad. Although some people will probably object to the game's length. It's only about 2 to 3 hours long. Even only an hour in, I was at about the 33% completion mark. So yeah, it's quite a short game. They do give you a new Game Plus mode with enhanced enemy placements in order to make things a bit more interesting, but yeah, if you're like me and only have time to really play through games like this once, you'll probably be through in 2 or 3 hours. And that might be a little bit much to ask for when it comes to a game that's like $20 US. In my case, it's $28.95 Australian. But if someone came up to me and said, hey, Mighty Goose is on sale, would you recommend it? I'd say absolutely. It is fun, the way that it is. It can get a bit boring, so I would recommend like only playing like 30 minutes of it at a time. Which comes out to about 1 or 2 stages. But outside of that, yeah, I would. Maybe wait for it to go on sale if 2 to 3 hours for one playthrough isn't the sort of thing you want for the length example when it comes to figuring out whether or not you want to buy a game. But I do legitimately enjoy it, and I would recommend it. So if you want to wait for it to go on sale, and it goes down to like $15 or something, you're like, yeah, that's worth it for 3 hours. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I would. It's good fun. Even if it's quite short and maybe not as creative as I would like it to be. Also, you can press the Y button to honk. Although, unfortunately, you have to swap that out in order to get an equipment. Although they do introduce another bit of equipment, which is like a honk shield that you can use to repel incoming bullets. It's great. But yeah, that's my opinions on Mighty Goose. It's good fun. I wish it was a little bit more creative and possibly a bit longer, but it's really pretty, it plays really well, and it gets that Metal Slug feeling down pat outside of its gameplay design issues. So yeah, it's good. This has been Blue Maxima. I'll see you all next time.